Welcome to the All Things Wildfire podcast, where we delve into the latest trends and hot topics in protecting properties against wildfire. So sit back, relax, and join us as we arm you against disaster.
So thank you everyone for joining me on another All Things Wildfire podcast. And today I have a guest that has been working with many HOAs in construction and painting and multifamily. And today she'll share some stories on what kind of impact wildfire has had. And then we're going to dig deeper into a couple things that I think the listeners are going to find very interesting with regards to when you're in a multifamily home, condominium, a townhome, etc. A lot of us live in these areas, and there are some things here that you're going to learn of what we can do to better prepare ourselves in case there's a disaster. So, Regan, why don't you go ahead and let us know a little bit about you?
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Regan Brown. I am the founder and former CEO of GB Group General Contractors and Painting, and we're a specialty contractor that works with primarily HOAs, apartments, any multifamily type of property. And I'm also the host of our podcast called HOA It's a True Story.
Boom. And guys, HOA It's a True Story is definitely a podcast for you guys to listen into. So look that up, give that a listen. And when they say it's a true story, you're going to hear some really cool stuff. Right? What did you say?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. We have some great stories on there.
Yeah, especially the last one, or one of the ones I was on. Anyways, so Reagan, let's jump into this. Part of what you guys do is fire investigation for some of these HOA communities. And can you talk a little bit about the risk, right? So this isn't necessarily a wildfire, but this is a fire investigation when you have a house fire or a fire in this dwelling that now triggers an investigation to really figure out what's the source of what took place. Can you give us some of the common things that you guys are finding that maybe the listeners could benefit from?
Well, so typically the fire department does the investigation, but if there's any access areas that need to take place to get us into areas for them to conduct their investigation, we can do that for them. We also do preliminary investigation prior to any kind of construction defect litigation to ensure that all the fire safety codes have been met. So one of the things that'll happen that we might find might be something like the attic chases are completely wide open as opposed to having fire block between them. And that kind of creates a chimney effect. So it is considered a violation, a code violation, a defect if it wasn't put in at the time of construction. We also look a lot at what we call party walls or common walls. I guess we all like the word party wall better just because it sounds more fun. But the wall that would be the wall that you would share with a neighbor. So making sure that it also has the appropriate fire blocking inside of it. And there's different ways for us to do that, but often it just involves cutting some of the drywall down and looking and letting experts get in there. So while we don't always form the opinion, we open things up so that legal can ensure that the experts are able to go in and look and see if it's been done properly. Now, also on the backside of that, if they do find a deficiency, then we're often hired to go in and do the repair or the reconstruction to bring everything back up to code and make it fire safe.
Got it. Okay. And I think one of the common things that we saw recently, we're rebuilding a fire. It's 4 units that caught fire. We're doing the rebuild on them, but the interesting thing is the fire started in one unit, in one kitchen, and it went up past the ceiling into the attic. And similar to what you're saying, the entire attic space was wide open. There was no blocking at all, no shear paneling, and nothing to isolate that
Right.
one attic, right? And so this is exactly, what when you're talking about this, I'm imagining, okay, this is exactly what happened here. And I think this building was built in the 70s, so back then it wasn't a requirement. But how scary that is as a homeowner or a renter, I should say, right? If I'm a renter and I live in one of these places, that's a scary thought to realize that these places can be open like that.
And it's not just fires that we've seen problems in those attic chases like that. We also have seen where police were chasing a suspect. They went up into the attic and then crawled, 9 units over and crashed through someone's ceiling.
Oh
So,
no! Wow.
and we've seen where they've had meth labs up in their attic space, not realizing, how many people that could affect. So
Wow.
it's a fire hazard up there for sure if it's not set up properly.
Big time. Okay, that's interesting. Now I don't want to have all of our listeners go in there and try to cut a hole up in their ceiling or crawl up the
No,
attic.
definitely don't.
But something to consider. If it's something that you share common walls and common spaces, and you have common attic spaces, something to really consider and think about of the vulnerabilities that we don't think about sometimes. We think, hey, this is a cool townhome. This is a cool condo complex. This is a cool apartment. I like it. I dig it. It's nice. Let's just live here. But we have to be mindful of what's potentially a cause for a liability, and really consider those things.
Hidden exposure.
Yes, hidden exposure. Now, you also, in our earlier conversation, you mentioned that there's the common walls also have a liability. And then you talked about maybe some potential blocking. Some of the things that we have found when we see the insurance companies get the fire investigators involved, we see the fire department, they have the reporting. That takes what I've found sometimes weeks for them to finish their report. The insurance carrier sends their fire investigator. And as I'm talking to them, these are the people that I kind of run into the most. It's an electrical problem, oftentimes. And there are a few products out there right now, and I just want to bring this to everyone's attention. I wish I had the name of it here with me right now. I just ordered it, my friends, and it was online, but it's a device that you plug in, and you plug it into one of your outlets, and this device begins to understand the current of what's going on in your home. And if there's a short or there's something going on, it'll sound off and just give you an alert that there's a potential problem. And I think that's so valuable because oftentimes someone is doing work on the property. They're doing some electrical work over the span of many, many years, and you just never know what you're moving into. You don't know who's done the work. Go ahead.
Yeah. And, one of the things when you're getting ready to use some type of device or tool, like you just mentioned, make sure that they have a rating, that they're actually a UL rated or safety rated and not just a product that can do something.
Yes.
Because that's sometimes the difference. And we've used those types of devices. They're like a GFI alarm, I think is kind of the layperson's understanding of what it does. But those are code compliant, and there's other devices, but you should at the very least from an electrical, make sure all your plugs have, the 3-prong plug and that they are attached to a GFI.
Yes. And part of those, when you say a 3-prong, a lot of these older multi-housing areas, well, I shouldn't say a lot. I don't know how many there still are now, but they're not grounded, right? There's only 2 plugs. And that poses a whole nother issue of electrical hazards.
Or when you see people break off the prong on their plug because their outlet.
You mean that's not okay to do? What are you talking about?
No.
Isn't that how we do it?
Don't break off that prong. Find a new outlet.
Yeah, or get an adapter, right? So,
Right.
100%. So now we talked earlier too about some of the experiences of after a fire, right?
Right.
Like these tenants um, that have never been through anything like this now are in upheaval as to like you have to be relocated. There's a lot of changes going on for these individuals. Can you share a little bit about what you've run into?
Yeah, definitely when we see a fire in a multi-family unit environment, it's often not just the affected burned unit, but several neighboring units. It could be above, beside, even one or two down, depending on the type of fire and how invasive it was. So you might end up moving 5 or 6 families out for one unit fire. And I don't think people are prepared in their reserve studies or their emergency funds that they're going to have that many people affected. And I think a lot of these folks, because their unit's intact, but it stinks or they have smoke damage, and now they're really upset because, excuse me, pets, children, all of these kinds of things are affected in their daily life. And they become pretty upset that they're now going to go live in a hotel or motel.
Yes.
And we're waiting for insurance estimates, approvals, permits. Then the cleanup can begin. And it's sometimes it can take a very long time. And that's unfortunate, but it can take quite a while to get people relocated and put back in.
You know, uh, and I think this for listeners, either for you as a listener or for friends or for family, it's very important to communicate with everyone that as a tenant, you are vulnerable, and as a tenant, your best case scenario is to get insurance. Have
Absolutely.
insurance, yeah, because what what I see happening, unfortunately, is we get a call from an HOA and said, "Hey, we have a fire loss. We need your help," and no one's had well, people have had the conversation with the tenant, but the tenant is distraught, and the tenant's saying, we're hearing, oh, do you think that the HOA is going to pay for me to live somewhere for the next 6 months while the apartment gets repaired? And it's like, do you have insurance? And they're like, oh, no, I didn't think I needed insurance. And now they're in this massive, terrible situation that could really crush people financially because now you have to relocate, number one. Number two, you may have lost a lot of furniture. Hopefully you didn't, there was no loss of life in this fire, but it really does change your life, at least for a period of time, when if you had insurance, your insurance policy will pay to relocate you. Your insurance policy will pay for you to kind of get back and set up again and live life until those repairs are done. But without insurance, it really becomes it's a nightmare that you went through it, and it's a double nightmare that you have to continue to go through this fire for the
Absolutely.
unforeseeable future. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And on top of that, most people don't realize that they should get renters insurance to protect them if they're a tenant. And if they're a homeowner for a condo unit or townhome unit, it's very difficult now, as we know that the insurance crisis in California, specifically California, um, can be quite debilitating in trying to get any kind of insurance. The wildfires from 2017, 18 on, I'm sure I think they estimated it somewhere around 10 billion in losses each year. And so that has really put the knife in the wound, so to speak. And it's very hard to even get condo insurance right now, much less if you have it, keep it. But we're seeing a whole new problem now with insurance.
Now, Reagan, if you don't mind, I'll have you share. Like where do you just bought a condo,
I
right?
just bought a condo.
Where did you buy the condo? What area in California is that, and what trouble now are you having that you
So I'm
discussed
in
earlier?
Northern California, Bay
Got
Area,
it.
the
Okay.
Silicon Valley Bay Area. And I bought a condo recently, and I have contacted at least 10 insurance companies
Really?
and cannot get any insurance. If you're already in an HOA, then you may already have it and they're just escalating the price substantially. But if this is a brand new construction unit. So for us to try to get insurance right now is really difficult. And if you're near a hillside or even remotely near a fire area, forget it. So now we're stuck with the California, what is it? Fair plan. That's it. And you can, piggyback onto your own umbrella policy for liability protection, but it's a very last ditch effort safety net.
You know
It's
what's
not
interesting
much of
is
one.
a lot of the insurance brokers that we speak with, they say, man, I wish that my client would have called me and said, I'm considering buying this property. What do you think about what the insurance would cost? Any idea? And then give them some time to process this, check with underwriting, get back to them. But unfortunately, the insurance brokers are getting like, oh, by the way, Marcia, I just bought this condo. I'm an escrow, and here you go, right? So I
Yes.
think the insurance brokers would love to have a little bit more insight in the future before making that kind of purchase. But this is becoming the reality for a lot of us, is that, wow, if we're going to make a real estate purchase, not only do we have to be, looking at, do we want to have an agent represent us or not? But number two, real estate agent, you got to have your insurance agent or broker on that same team to make sure that you're looking at this asset really with all the different exposures that you could potentially have, because some customers would buy a property for, say, $1 million, and the insurance, unfortunately, is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And now it doesn't make sense anymore, And so it's really interesting to see the dynamic that continues to permeate real estate that has to do with insurance, and now you're living through that. So did you already lock in insurance?
No, I'm still working on that. I
Got it.
did find two that are looking into getting me quotes. So at least I found some that are quoting it. I don't know what it's going to come out yet, but there's some programs like Fire Safe, I guess, is one where they can go to your HOA or your property and give you all of the things you should do to make the property more fire safe and resistive. And then through that participation, you can get an insurance discount, so to speak.
Yes.
And that is definitely, if your HOA isn't participating in that, I highly recommend that, or even just your home. I know we had Fire Safe on our podcast not too long ago, and it was very interesting because one of our employees lives in a high fire area, and they were just told, you're going to do this. There was no option for them, and they're not in an HOA. They're just in a community that's in a high fire area, and everybody in that community was told, this is what you have to do to, or we're going to get you. We're going to tax you or do something, or come in and do it ourselves. So I guess, it's really nice to see that they're really trying to take charge on the preventative side and not on the back end when the damage is done.
Yes. And I think the challenge there, Regan, is that, like with anything, a burglar alarm is a good thing to have, but
Exactly.
you're going to be extremely, you're going to desire it more than ever the day after you're broken into, right?
Yes.
That's when you're like, I don't care what it costs. I'm going to do what I have to do. And it's unfortunate, like, these are the triggering events that cause us to do this thing. And it's similar to wildfire. It's like there's so many things that we can do to prevent significant damage to our properties, yet it's something that won't happen to us. It's just stuff you see on the news, not going to happen to my community. Or, why would I do that if we haven't had a wildfire here for 10 years? There's never been an issue. Like all these different things that we rationalize as to why we should not do the thing. And I tie it back to, insurance is something that I think we're probably insuranced out in California. Like, oh my goodness, what else do we need insurance for? And but I have to say that I am a big believer in insurance, in many, many types of insurance. And in my opinion, it's well worth managing that risk. And I'll just speak from a personal example is I purchased life insurance for my brother and I when we started our company. And we were 2 years into the company and he suddenly passed away. And
I'm sorry.
Thank you. It triggered the insurance policy. And I have to say, like, if we didn't have insurance to allow the company to reset and to go and get new people to help us through this difficult time, then I don't know that we'd be here right now. And so
Sure.
when it comes to insurance, whether you're a tenant, whether you're a homeowner, or whether it's prevention that we need to do, those are the things that I realize myself from a personal level. It's well worth it. And if I never use it, thank God I've never had to use it, right? But in the case that I do need to use it, wow, what a lifesaver that could be.
Well, and to your point, we've all seen these photos of aftermath of wildfires, right? And there's like 100 homes burnt and one standing. And so you kind of pray that yours is the one standing. As you said, you kind of out of sight, out of mind. It isn't going to happen to me. But the reality is, if you do have a substantial fire, it's a total loss, a catastrophic loss, right? If you end up in that scenario. And a burglary, you might just lose your TV and some money or jewelry or something like that. But you lose everything in fire. You lose your photos and your memories and your clothes and just the most basic things we don't think about. So to your point, if the insurance is critical so that you can kind of restart. And I've had some personal friends who've lost everything in fires, and they always talk about their life before and after because, oh, I lost all that in the fire. Oh, I don't have any baby pictures of my children because they're all gone in the fire. And family heirlooms that were passed down from grandmothers and grandfathers, those things all go away. So they do a lot more damage to your psyche and your family than you ever imagine it's going to be. So any measure you can take preventatively, we should set up and really pay attention and try to do everything we can to prevent it from happening.
Amen. I love that. So true. Now, really quick, guys, circling back, and I'll ask you right now, Regan, if you have anything that you want to share with our listeners before we close. But the plugin that I was talking about is called Ting Fire. So if you go to tingfire.com, this is one that's approved. A lot of I shouldn't say a lot, but there's some insurance companies that are using this, and they're also letting their homeowners know, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, this would be a good idea for you guys to have in there. So this the Ting device helps prevent electrical fires before they happen. And those are the ones that they'll check the electrical wiring in the home constantly.
That's great.
And I think this is so neat because part of what we run into when we go into a fire damaged home, or even look, Texas. I'll just use this example. We went to help people when there was a freeze in Texas a year and a half ago, maybe.
Yeah.
So many pipes were broken, and we went in there to help a bunch of people. And as we went in there and we saw the ceilings were collapsed, we saw the plumbing lines that were copper connected to ABS, connected to galvanized. And I'm like, okay,
Whoa.
What is going on here? It's the Wild West. And then in the walls, we see electrical outlets, how they're just connected. So in Texas, you don't need a license to build a home. Apparently, you do need some specific licenses, but that's when it's super risky. That when you buy a used home, you never know what people have done. It looks
Sure.
good. Even the inspector says, "Oh, it looks fine." But by installing some of these devices, you have an additional alert of what may be not done right in the home.
Absolutely. One thing I would just add to our conversation is how often when we go in to do work on projects, um, it's now a code requirement in almost every county in our area that we have to make sure we have actual working smoke alarms and CO2 in the unit. And I'm always amazed at how many people the battery gets low, it starts chirping and they pull it out or they take the battery out or they just ignore it. Do not ignore your fire and smoke alarms and CO2 alarms. Make sure those are working. And a lot of times they say to just change the battery when you do your daylight savings time changes.
Okay.
So every
Okay.
spring and every fall, make sure you go in and change those batteries if it's not already hardwired. A lot of the newer properties are hardwiring them in,
Got
but
it.
definitely a reminder, keep your smoke alarms working.
Oh, so true. And Reagan, look, here's the problem though that I see, and I can see why people. I don't know if I'm the only one who's done that in the past, but man, that thing goes off at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Always.
It starts chirping, and I'm like, if I had a gun, I would shoot that thing. It's like, okay, then you got to get up on a ladder, and then you're trying to fix it. It's not working, and you're frustrated, and then you get no sleep. So I can see why people just want to disconnect that. But it's so very true, and I think that's a really good practice to have a set time of the year that we switch out the batteries, so that way it doesn't become something that we have to respond to urgently. It's just something that
At
we're
1 in the
doing.
morning, with a ladder in your
Exactly.
underwear. And
Exactly.
definitely, that's a really good reminder is do it during your daylight savings time when you're changing your clocks. Just go up and change the batteries, even if they're not chirping. Just do it. That way,
Yes.
it's not going to go off on you at 1 a.m. and, be a problem. And, or if you do end up having to take it down in the middle of the night, go back the next day and put it back. Get the
Yes.
batteries and put it back.
Yes. And it's interesting because we actually offer that service to some of our clients, and they take us up on it. There are other clients that the light bulbs are 20 feet in the air on the ceilings, right? And they think it looks beautiful when they buy the house, but when that bulb goes out, someone's got to change the light bulb. And so there are things like that we do. But the reality is we have to get in tune with what can we do to not only start the process of prevention, but continue the process of maintenance and prevention. So I love that. So very true. Reagan, anything else that you wanna add that you think the listeners would you'd
Well,
want
if
to
you
share
are
with the listeners?
buying a new home or an older home and you're hiring a home inspector, make sure that your home inspection report includes those things like making sure they checked the fire alarms or checked the attic space or checked the electrical, and that they're looking at the termite because termites often create a lot of problems. So what we're seeing now is they're bringing the foliage away from the house at least 5 feet to protect the house from termites, right? And then that in turn is also helping the house from not burning during fire season.
Boom. I love that. And I think we'll end with that. And it's cool. And I'll talk to Vincent about putting the image up there. But in Lahaina, it's exactly what happened with that house.
Right.
Is the home that survived? I read in the paper that the reason that they didn't have any vegetation 5 feet from the home is they were concerned that this 100-plus-year-old home was going to be impacted by termites. And so they decided to keep the vegetation away. And to your point, double win because now the embers didn't have anywhere to land. The embers didn't have anything to ignite. that was going to then ignite the
Yeah.
home. So awesome.
Thank you. I'm glad we got to talk about this, especially going into fire season again. Well, we're kind of already in it. We're not even going into it. And so far it's been a pretty good year. So let's knock on wood. But I did see there was a fire today going on is it in Hawaii?
So I got word. I got to double check where that was. But to your point, like we're in it right now, and
Yes.
up north, do you guys get any winds? Because here in down
Oh,
south,
yeah.
okay,
The Santa Anas, you get the Santa Ana winds that
yes,
just drive the wildfires. We get it too, and not as dry as the Santa Anas, but we do get them. And you know, when the day that the hot wind comes, you just feel it that it's going to spark somewhere. And I live currently 80 acres away from a big hay selling company that has ginormous warehouses full of hay, and one caught on fire like 2 weeks ago, and they went in and sprayed it with water, right, to put out the fire, and it smoldered for 4 days. Just they could, they had finally had to go in and tear down the building and pull all the hay out so they could water it, stretched out. Because if you think of a hay bale, they're just concentrated, tightly bound.
exactly, yeah.
That thing smoked and smoked and smoked, and they couldn't get it out. It took 4 days for them to get out just one warehouse of hay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to be mindful and still be ready for the winds that could really not only cause ignition, right, when something falls down, but also causes a spread.
And
when
I'm
this
sure
thing
that
starts
building
going.
was not sprinkler, that they did not have sprinklers in it. So anything
Exactly.
going forward, I guarantee they will have to have sprinkled.
Yeah. Got it. Good point. Good point. All right, Reagan. Well, thank you so much for being
My
on our show.
pleasure.
Thank you for dropping some good information for our listeners, and we will be in touch.
All right. Thank you
All right.
again for having me.
You're welcome, Reagan. Take care.
That's all for this episode of All Things Wildfire. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to our show and follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things wildfire. And as always, thanks for listening.